Well, here we go. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. First of all, Caleb, that is one fantastic jacket. As we talk Tennessee's win over Texas A&M, and we are off and running from the get. As first of all, your thoughts on Texas A&M and what Tennessee did to them, and basically pushing them around. I thought for the most part up front in two different ways. Caleb, I thought that Tennessee was able to push Tennessee around up front, and that was evident on offense by the amount of rushing yards they had. But on the flip side, Caleb, they were also able to generate enough of a pass rush, oftentimes without blitzing more than four guys or without sending more than four guys and utilizing the blitz, and able to create a really difficult pocket for Max Johnson. I thought it was an all-around win, and a win we never thought we would see from Tennessee, and that is a close, low-scoring win. Your thoughts before we get rolling?
Yeah, it was. It was a close, low score. It was the type of game that would make Philip Fulmer proud from his heyday, and it's the type of game that would make players from the '98 team very proud. Honestly, which is I can't remember the last time I watched a game involving Tennessee where the defense was basically like, "Hey, let us go win the game. Just don't mess it up. We'll go win the game for you. Let us take over." The closest I could say is 2019 when Tennessee won game with Jared Garantano. They beat Mississippi State, and they barely threw the ball at all in that game. But that Mississippi State team was not this Texas A&M team in talent. I don't remember the last time Tennessee beat a team of Texas A&M's caliber. You can say whatever you want about how well they're coached, but the talent is clearly there. And I can't remember the last time they beat a team of that caliber with that level of talent where they put all the faith in the defense to win the game.
Agreed. Pardon me, though, that are listening, as I'm fighting a little bit of a cold, playing hurt today, but I will be just fine. So we got SEC Power Rankings coming up, a Week 7 recap. Spencer Riley, the former Vol, will join us, and we always look forward to that. Tennessee up to number 17 in the AP poll, number 15 in the coaches poll. 9.5 underdogs to Alabama. That number, is it surprising? We shall discuss. But let's begin with that defensive win against Texas A&M. And it's brought to you by our friends at Andy Mason Real Estate. I'll tell you more about them. So it was a defensive win. And here are my thoughts. As frustrated as some of you might be about Joe Milton and his lack of progression into this season, you should be every bit as excited about what this Tennessee defense is able to do. Physically, athletically, skill-wise, I don't know if the defensive backs are all that much better, but they're better because they don't have to defend wide receivers for 4 and 5 seconds. They have to defend receivers for 2 and 3 seconds. And Caleb, that is a monster difference. And it's because of that front seven.
Yes, and the front seven, I don't want to shortchange the front seven last year. Byron Young was a very good pass rusher, but the front seven, as we've talked about, was thin last year. You know, if Jeremy Banks was out or if Byron Young wasn't playing well, you just weren't going to get the type of push that you get this year. But you're right, they can rotate in so many guys now that they're constantly applying that pressure. They're just not applying it at certain times, which you're right, makes the defensive backs look a lot better. And I think that's a really big part of this game, because I think the story of the year so far has been the dramatic improvement of Tennessee's secondary. And I think a big part of that, as you've talked about, is the secondary only has to guard for 3 seconds, not 5 seconds. And look, everybody on the message board who was coming at him, everybody, myself included, owes Kamal Hadden an apology, because he's showing what he can do when he has just a little bit more time, when he doesn't have to guard somebody for 5 seconds, put it that way.
Listen, 4 defensive backs that are Deion Sanders can't guard receivers for 5 seconds. It's just impossible. That's part of football. And a lot of people are already, including David Michael, saying it's time to replace Joe Milton. He should pass the torch. He's not gonna pass the torch. Nobody's gonna give up their starting job. But if there is any thought as to play Nico instead of Joe Milton, I think that was put to rest on Saturday because the defense played so well. And right now, Joe Milton can play incredibly average, Caleb, and still be this can still be a very good football team. A couple of other comments from David Michael that are pretty strong on the message board. I told Dave a few weeks ago concerning Milton and calls for Nico. Let's wait and get Cooper back and make that call. Well, Cooper is back. It's time for Milton to be a real leader and pass the torch. That's not going to happen. Nobody's going to say I'm giving up my starting job. David also saying, love Joe, but it's time to go to be a leader and do the right thing. Now, here's a couple of things. We don't know that Nico is ready to play. I think he is, based off what I've been told. He's been getting 50% of the first team snaps, and he would be ready to go. But I'm going to still harp that this coaching staff wants Joe Milton to succeed. There's not going to make a change. And if this defense wasn't as good as it was, perhaps we'd be having that real conversation. Because if they're not as good as they were, and Tennessee doesn't beat Texas A&M on Saturday, and suddenly you're staring at 2 losses. But right now, Caleb, as much as I think Nico should have been playing meaningful snaps earlier, you have got to kind of run this thing out and see where you are. Because if you put Nico in there at any point, he may not be good. There is a realistic possibility of that. And with this defense, you're at least in the mix. All of Tennessee's goals are still out there. So I don't understand why you would do it now.
Yeah, you're not going to make the switch now. I mean, if anything, you're not going to make it because whatever gain you might make, I mean, Dave, you are going to split the team if you make that decision. And I just don't know if that's worth it. Now, I talked about this on Saturday. Tennessee in 1989 did make a switch when Sterling Hinton got them to 5-0 with some pretty good wins. One at UCLA that year, and another one at Auburn at home. I think you probably remember that game, Dave, when Reggie Cobb just dominated and Auburn was a top 5 team. But I think that was kind of a different scenario, different situation, and they knew they had to be more of a passing team because Reggie Cobb got dismissed. It's not the same right now. They don't really have to change their offense because any player was kicked off the team or got hurt for the year. And they can still be a run, or put it this way. If Jalen Wright gets hurt, for instance, Dave, we might be having a different conversation about Joe Milton versus Nico, because if Jalen Wright gets hurt, then you got to start putting the ball in the quarterback's hands a lot more. But you don't have to do that right now.
No. And with all goals on the table, listen, as much as we know about Nico, we don't know much of anything. As much as we know about Joe, we don't know anything really about Nico. And he could go out there and spit the bit. It's happened before. I've seen great players go out there and just not be good. So are you going to take, at this point, you painted yourself into a corner because you don't know what you have, which is why I said that he should have played earlier, particularly against in that UTSA game. He should have played some meaningful snaps early. But you have everything on the table now, and Joe's sitting at the head of the table. Are you going to tell him to get up and put somebody else at the head of the table? He's been the chef to this point. I don't see how you could make any sort of change. Now, if Tennessee loses to Alabama and suddenly you can't win an SEC East, you can't win an SEC championship, you probably aren't going to make the college football playoff, then yeah, I think we're having a different argument a week from today. But as of right now, Tennessee, and we'll get to that, is 10-point underdogs, 9.5 actually, to Alabama. And there's reason to think that they could go to Tuscaloosa and win. Probably wouldn't pick it. Vegas doesn't think so. But until you find that out, I don't see how you can make a change, Caleb.
Yeah, I don't either. And even if Tennessee loses close at Alabama this week, and I still don't think they're going to make a change. I think they still, and I said this in January, I said this in August, and I'm saying this now. I think Tennessee saw at worst this year as a transition year where Joe Milton's not a great quarterback, but they can get to maybe a 9-3 record with him, 10-3. And Dave, as a program as a whole, think about this for a minute. You lose a great quarterback in Hendon Hooker. You lose 2 great receivers in Cedric Tillman and Jalen Hyatt. You have a major drop-off in talent in everything that Josh Heupel needs to make a system run. And in kind of a year where you have that drop-off, you still go 9-3 or 10-3 or something like that. That's a really good sign for the state of the program long-term, isn't it?
I think the trend is better for Tennessee's program right now than it would be if Joe Milton was just balling out and the defense was horrible. Man, I think the trend now is that this program is getting better in places they needed to get better. And I think if you're a Tennessee fan right now, and you've got to be looking at this thing saying, hey, the defense is getting better. You know, you're eventually going to get great quarterback play with Josh Heupel as the head coach. Travis points out that Tennessee is 5-1, which is absolutely right. I'm curious who is on that avatar. It looks like Johnny Knoxville playing guitar, Travis. But anyway, I think that, this Tennessee football team has to continue down this route. I would have argued something different at times with Joe Milton. He is what he is. Smoky Mountain Red says after Joe's knee tweak, Nico should have played the game out. That's the UTSA game. I totally agree. I thought you had the backdrop for doing that. You go out there in the second half and you say he tweaked his knee. It's UTSA. The game was in hand. So go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. The like button actually feeds me vitamin C since I'm playing hurt a little bit and under the weather. You click that like button and I get over my cold that much quicker. So go ahead and hit it. We appreciate it.
Jamarcus Russell has something to help you get over it.
What's that?
I said Jamarcus Russell has something to help you get over it.
The scissor. Yeah, I might go to the scissor. You just have to put a 24-hour limit on it. You can't do it past that because that's when you like it a little too much. Trevor says, here's the problem I have with the whole "don't sit Joe, you lose again" argument. I really feel like this team is a good quarterback play away from being good this year. And next year, so many people exit. Listen, I'm with you, but again, Nico could spit the bit.
And that's also not. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
That's also not fully true. Look, yes, Joe's a major drop-off at quarterback, but guys, we have to say the jury's in. There's a major drop-off at receiver this year too. This is not the same receiver unit that was there last year. And if you're watching the NFL at all, Jalen Hyatt, every time he's in the game, he makes plays, and the Giants are just too stupid to realize they should use him a heck of a lot more than they are using him. And, I mean, there's a massive drop-off at receiver. There's no question.
No, we thought Jalen Hyatt was running around free because of the offense and the approach and the way they built this team when they had the ball, right? That's what we thought. Yeah, we thought that Cedric Tillman was going to pull over coverage and then Brew McCoy would pull over coverage, and that's why Jalen Hyatt was so open. Let me give you a little insight. Jalen Hyatt was just really damn good, and he was really damn fast. So that's something you have to remember. We shortchanged. I don't know how he did it. He won the Blitnikoff Award, but I feel like, Caleb, you did, I did, everybody did, just kind of thought he was running open because he was running open. And that's not the case. He was getting open.
Yeah, he was getting open. We all owe him an apology. I said Cedric Tillman was a better draft prospect than Hyatt, and I still think Tillman could be good in the NFL, but I think Hyatt's going to be better long-term. Again, if the Giants had any brains on their staff, they would use him more, but that's a pathetically run franchise. If anybody watched that game last night, some of the worst coaching of all time.
I did not, because I was on the scissor. Nimrod showing promise. Excuse me. Nimrod showing promise. I really like that guy. I haven't seen enough from him until Saturday. His athleticism, the way he moves around, I'm pretty good at that, I think. And I was really impressed with Nimrod more than I thought I would be. And I'm jealous of his last name because it is definitely cooler than Hooker. There's no question about it. Let's get to the torchbearers and the report card. So right now, the torchbearers, as you know, in Circle Park, there's this dude holding up a torch. And he is the ultimate award that you can win. And we have seen football players such as Joshua Dobbs win that award. It's an all-around award, not just an athlete or academic award. It's just your best ball. And those are the torchbearers. It's brought to you by our friend Andy Mason, realestate.com. Real estate experts with over 4 decades combined experience in East Tennessee. Best prices, best service in the Knoxville area. Andy Mason, realestate.com. So who are our torchbearers coming off the Texas A&M win, sir?
All right, number 5. And before you question on why he's not higher, I will explain. But number 5 is Jalen Wright. Over 7 yards a carry against a dominant front four, 136 yards. Jalen Wright had a heck of a game, and I can't say enough about how hard he ran. So Jalen Wright's number 5. The reason he's not higher is because of number 4, which is Cooper Mays. We said Cooper Mays versus Walter Nolan would be the matchup of the game. Cooper Mays won that matchup, Dave. He won that matchup handily.
Cooper Mays Injuries are going to be a question mark because he's had 2 seasons that have been maligned by that, going back 2 years ago and this year. Cooper Mays bumped up his draft stock by a round against Walter Nolan. I don't think there's any question about that. You watch that and you get over the concerns about injuries, and you're going to say that guy may be, I don't know all the centers in college football, but that guy might be the best center in college football, period, end of discussion.
It's funny. I'm going to say this now because his brother was a more highly touted recruit. Cooper Mays is a better NFL prospect than his older brother. I mean, he just is. He will be better in the NFL than his older brother, injuries notwithstanding. So, yeah, he balled out. Number 3. Now, everybody wants to give, and this is kind of a duo war, but I gave it to one person because Gabe Jeudy-Lally did have 2 pass breakups and a pick, whereas Kamal Hadden had a more meaningless pick and no pass breakups. But I gave the torchbearer to Kamal Hadden, Dave. And I think the reason I did that is because they weren't even throwing Kamal Hadden's way in this game. They didn't even look his way. And that was a huge, I mean, Kamal Hadden played like a shutdown corner is supposed to play. And again, guys, this is not the Kamal Hadden of last year. He's an all SEC cornerback right now. He's the best cornerback in the SEC right now. And I'm not saying that as a hyperbole.
Wow.
He is the best
cornerback in the SEC.
Yes. Look at how, and by the way, PFF grades back me up on that. He has the best coverage grades in the SEC right now. He is the problem with like these awards is they're stats based, but you can't do that for a cornerback. He should be SEC Defensive Player of the Week or be in contention for it, honestly, because of how well he played. And the only reason he shouldn't is because of some other people I'm going to name on this list.
Yep. And Gabe Jeudy-Lally's was more of a pressure pick as well. So Kamal Hadden has gone from an absolute GOAT to a superstar. Again, click that like and subscribe button.
Goat to goat.
What's that?
Goat to goat. Goat like laughable to the goat.
Yeah, there you go. That's pretty good. All right. So if you want to make me feel better, hit that like button because I'm battling one heck of a cold. But I'm good to go. I'm playing hurts. I'm out to get this done. All right. So who else is the torchbearer?
All right. So the best defensive player, because Kamal Hadden is up there, but Kamal Hadden isn't as good if it's not for one James Pierce Jr. And again, this is a defensive line award as a whole because they all played great. But James Pierce Jr. was the biggest stud of all of them. And James Pierce Jr., you have to respect him in coverage if he drops back as much as you do as a rusher off the edge. I've never seen an edge rusher that you can trust to drop back in coverage as fluidly as James Pierce and still be that effective.
He is a scary good player, and I will give Fred White a lot of credit. He said Leonard Little top ability, and I thought he was crazy at the time, but Fred doesn't throw those out, so I take it as gospel. And then we had Jimmy Himes on last week that agreed with that. You are looking at the next great superstar on Tennessee's football team. I thought that there might be other guys that would be elite players in college and the NFL, but right now, I thought it was Rue McCoy, actually, that he was the best NFL prospect on the team based off some scouts I had talked to. But if you look at the NFL, they don't place as much of an emphasis on the receiver. And James Pierce Jr. plays a position they put a lot of emphasis on. That guy very well could be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft. Zero exaggeration, as long as there are no more maturity issues from this point forward.
Yeah, were there ever any maturity issues? I didn't know if there were or not.
Yeah, he needed to get a little bit more focused, which is why you're seeing kind of the explosion now.
Well, you and Fred both said put him in bubble wrap this offseason. Like after spring, y'all said put him in bubble wrap, make sure he's ready to go. And y'all were both right. And he is, I didn't see it coming. And also sometimes he really thrives in this system because Tim Banks, even though he runs a 4-3, he still has the Pruitt philosophy of the edge rusher can kind of play off the ball or up on the line, and it doesn't really matter as much. And that's a big deal. That's a big way for James Pierce to benefit. So yeah, James Pierce he's incredible, and he's the best edge rusher on the team. Funny enough, Tyler Barron and Roman Harrison were the veterans. James Pierce is better than both of them by a mile.
Yep. From our SC Scout guy, he's a South Carolina fan. Where do you guys see Rattler being drafted? I think he's as interesting as Hooker because for a different reason. Hooker last year, you wondered if he was a product of the system. Rattler is a byproduct of the system. That system is holding him back. So I could see one player falling in love with Rattler, or one team, falling in love with Rattler and picking him higher in the draft than maybe he should be. So I like Rattler. He is playing out of his mind. But If Tennessee has Spencer Rattler right now, let's put it this way, they're undefeated.
Yeah,
Simple
that's
fact.
probably true.
Well, if they have Cooper Mays, are they undefeated?
Yeah, easily.
Yeah. I don't think people realize how out of sorts they were with Ollie Lane up front. And Ollie Lane did get beat, had a holding penalty, at least one. He just wasn't ready to go. All right, well, let's get to what other players we got.
The last one is D. Williams, number 1 player of the game. Not just the punt return for a touchdown. You know who he was the one who fielded that punt to set it up at the half-yard line. He was the one who caught that ball. So, I mean, he's got to be special teams player of the week for the SEC, right? If he's not, that's a shame.
Oh, he will be, and that'll come out on Monday. Top 5 players, we got you right there with the torchbearer and report card. So let's get rolling. I'm curious what you have. The quarterback, QB1, Joe Milton.
It's a D. It's a D. And by the way, the only reason it's not enough is because of how Joe Milton ran with the ball a couple of times that were nice, and that touchdown pass to Jacob Warren. But he threw an inexcusable interception in the red zone at the end. That stepping out of bounds when he was running on third and on the first drive on third down when he had the first down. Just basic elementary mistakes he made. It's a D.
All right, give me the running backs. Got to be an A, right?
B+. The only reason it's not an A is because there were 2 short yardage plays that they didn't convert the first down on, and Dylan Sampson did have a fumble.
All right, receivers.
D+. So barely better than the quarterbacks because receiver play was awful. Chaz Nimrod is the only reason it wasn't enough because I love the way he played. Squirrel White didn't have a chance to get involved in the game a lot, and Ramel Keaton had a drop. Dante Thornton had a drop. So it doesn't count as a drop for Thornton because McCollum Castles bailed him out, and we're going to show that with tight ends.
Okay, let's remember this too. You're grading the receivers and Joe Milton on what the coaches are deciding to use Joe Milton, and I think it's pretty conservative. All right, offensive line. Got to be an A.
Well, offensive line is B because of Ollie Lane. Sorry. And tight ends is an A, by the way. Shout out to Jacob Warren, touchdown catch, and McCollum Castles had that catch off Dante Thornton's drop. So...
All right. So on the defensive side, the defensive line, I feel like I want to call these guys the defensive front 7, and maybe we change our grade at some point. But your thoughts on the defensive line and how they play? Do you include Pierce as a lineman or edge rusher? Or
well, typically I separate the tackles and the edge rushers. In this game, I did it all as one unit because of the way they played, and it's an A+. Every single one of them played a perfect game. And I mean a perfect game. And I can't say enough. The key play was that 4th down stop where Max Johnson tripped over his lineman's foot. The play before that, they got a 3rd and 1 stop. I mean, they were dominant all game. And so Amari Thomas, Bryson Eason, great up the middle. James Pierce, the star on the outside. And, of course, Tyler Barron had a sack too, and Roman Harrison got pressure. They were all amazing.
Linebackers.
A. Only reason not an A+ is because Texas A&M did move down the field on the first drive, and that was because of some linebackers being out of position. So that's why.
All right, defensive backs.
Again, A, and that's because of the first drive. Otherwise, it would have been an A+.
All righty, here we go. Coming up, Spencer Riley.
Also, wait, return game, kicking game A-, return game A+.
Yep, there we go. All right, Spencer Riley joins us next. The former Vol. We'll talk some Coop and more. He is Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. This is a presentation of Off the Hook Sports. You give me 2 minutes, I give you a breakdown like no other. Spencer Riley, former Vol.
Sun, sand, and salt water, the beach is a very relaxing place. Unless you wear contacts. Ow! Open your eyes to the best the beach has to offer with LASIK vision correction from Campbell Cunningham Laser Center.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co.? What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TriStarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TristarHatsCo.com. That's TristarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TristarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do to save an additional 10% off. TristarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
Welcome back. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. We'll visit with Spencer Riley very shortly. Your thoughts on the Vols and how they played. Let's go ahead and fill out the message board now. Caleb, at what point did you feel like Tennessee had that victory?
Ooh, at what point did I think Tennessee had that victory? I feel like Tennessee won the game, honestly, when on that field goal drive to put them up 17-13, because that was in the fourth quarter. Texas A&M was going to have to mount a touchdown drive to win, and I felt Tennessee's defense, given their pass rush and their secondary, knowing Texas A&M was going to have to score a touchdown, was able to play a lot more free in that game. And just watching the flow of the game, I've watched enough football in my time, and I'm sure you have too, Dave. I was pretty confident that Texas A&M wasn't going to be able to mount a game-winning touchdown drive, knowing they had a touchdown towards the end. Once the field goal put them up, Tennessee up 17-13, I felt like the game was in hand.
Yeah, I don't know what point it was, but I was pretty sure that Tennessee was going to win when I saw James Pierce running free as a bird. When it was he was fantastic. Travis says when D scored, it was over. And it's probably true. Didn't you write that as your turning point in the game?
My turning point was the punt that set up the D score, because that punt was crucial.
But that whole exchange to me was way different and pretty darn impressive by the Vols. And listen, they've got a punting guy. I used to hate it when people would say the punter is a weapon. That sounds a little bit silly, but it's absolutely true. The punter is a weapon in this offense, and that Australian rules deal that's going on. How did somebody not discover that 50 years ago? Because those guys can absolutely, with the way they kick it, drop it at the 1 yard line. It's impressive.
It is, and also the ambidextrous punting totally throws off people trying to field the punt. And yeah, it's a huge deal. You're right, and I mean, I got to be honest. Tennessee is a rare school that punting has been a weapon for a long time. I mean, I go back to the 2003 Miami game. Dustin Colquitt won that game for Tennessee by himself. I mean, again, Tennessee's the one school where, because to me, a punter is the least valuable player on your team, even less valuable than a kicker. But Tennessee has managed to get value out of punters in the past, and they're one of the few schools that did that.
Love this guy. Let's go to Spencer Riley, who joins us. Spencer Riley, former Vol head coach Jeff County, who they had a monstrous win a couple of weeks ago. Tell us about Jeff County before we talk Vols. As Spencer, you continue to drop weight during the season. Is that how you do things?
Well, a lot of stress involved, I guess. But as much as I walk on a Friday night and walk during the week, I mean, try to get my steps in for sure. Got to watch what you eat, you know what I mean? So slowly but surely, trying to be less fat, man. Just every day.
That's my goal. People say, you going to the gym? What do you want to do? To be less fat. Doesn't matter if it's cardio or lifting. Like, the goal is to be less fat.
At the end of the day.
Tell me about Jeff County before we get to the Vols.
Hey, man, we wasn't on. I don't guess I was on last week with you guys. We had a big win versus Marshtown West last Friday night, or not 2 weeks ago, in an overtime win, and then we played. I'm sorry, it was versus Westridge. I'm sorry, that's who we played last. Before we played Ferry on this last Thursday night, got a big region win against them. Everything but secured the region title now for sure on that win there with Westridge, and then we played Farragut this Thursday night, this past week, non-region game, and had a big victory over them and our kids. First time they had beaten Farragut. Farragut had won 8 straight against Jeff County, so we got another first at Jefferson County this year in a long line of changing the culture in the program and the expectations for Jefferson County football.
It's pretty cool. How
Yeah.
proud would you be if you're Josh Heupel that you won a lot of games with some talent at receiver last year, some great talent at quarterback, but now you're winning games in a totally different way. You're not getting the chunk plays. You're running the football. You're getting the extended running plays, the screens, and you're playing defense. To me, people can continue to complain about Joe Milton if they want to, but the trajectory of the program, even the record might not say it at the end of the year. I think it's very positive because they're much better defensively than they were a year ago.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. Defense wins championships, being able to run the football and control the clock. I mean, Josh Heupel's not about that. His program and what they do offensively, that is the perception that they are a throw it around football team. Well, if they don't run the football, they're not very good in the passing game. Let's call it how it is, right? He'll tell you right off the bat, got to be able to run the football and got to be able to run it successfully. And, I thought they did a really, really good job with that group versus a really good defense on Saturday. I mean, I was really, really impressed with the group as a whole. I mean, you rushed for 230 yards in the SEC. That's pretty impressive day. So it's exciting to see those guys get physical and play a physical brand of football that's not been played at Tennessee in a long time.
Very true.
Spencer, you kind of know firsthand about that, what you just said, right? Because I guess in 97, after Jay Graham left, the first 3 games, even Peyton Manning himself struggled because y'all couldn't get a running game going until y'all found Jamal Lewis, wasn't it?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, we were playing a bunch of young guys too, still in the offensive line and still trying to figure out how to make that work. And didn't really know. Had a bunch of different backs there and didn't know. Sean Bryson moved from tailback to fullback. Mark Levine was a tailback at that time. A couple other guys, and he had this young guy by the name of Jamal Lewis. Pretty talented guy, man. We all knew he was kind of talented and just, it took a little bit for us to find our groove and for him to find his niche and how it would work for us. And, to me, the brand of football that Tennessee won with on Saturday is sexy football.
Amen.
Because it's physical, you run the football, you play great defense. It's not what people want to see today. Let's just call it how it is. They want to complain because you're not completing it 30 yards down the field. You're not making these big junk plays. But you know what? At the end of the day, they dominated and made them did not like the outcome when they started handing the football off. A&M didn't, time and time again, and they just punished that defensive front for A&M, and they made their plays. Sometimes that's going to happen, but at the end of the day, the physicality over 4 quarters will demoralize you at some point in time.
Did you feel like this could be coming if Joe Milton didn't play at a Hendon Hooker level? Did you think that Josh Heupel could change this approach to playing football? Did you have any insight into that? Or are you kind of surprised like me that they could win in such a different way?
No, I thought their defense was good from the get-go. From the first time I was on the air with you guys, I thought the defensive front was probably the best defensive front they've had there in years. So when you got 4 down guys, you got down guys that can play like the air guys do. They're pretty special, pretty talented, and they're finally found their niche and their role here at Tennessee. And some of those guys who came back for their senior year, they're having productive years, man. They had another year in the program, another year in the weight room, another year buying into the system and understanding it, and another year with Rodney Garner. Come on, man. You play with Rodney Garner, you're going to end up being a player. Because if you don't want to end up being a player, you'll end up leaving. So let's just call it how it is. Because Coach Garner, he's a dog now. He's an old school football coach that will tell you the truth. And if you don't like the truth, and let's be honest, a lot of these kids today don't like the truth. Neither does parents. They don't like to hear it. Don't like to hear about little Johnny. But at the end of the day, it's a job for him, and he does a great job with it, and that whole staff does defensively. Hey, man, super excited for them and the program.
Yeah, so Spencer, talking about the offensive line on the other side, I agree. I was so impressed with how they controlled Texas A&M's front 4 because I thought Texas A&M was the best front 4 they had faced all year. Cooper Mays just absolutely won that battle with Walter Nolan all night. But there were still concerns at left guard with some of Ollie Lane's issues, and that was 2 weeks with 2 weeks off. Is there a concern there? Does it seem like Tennessee just doesn't have a person to fill that void at the moment?
They've not found the right piece. You know what I mean? The truly piece that and it may not always be sexy. You know what I mean? At that spot. You know what I mean? And I get it. You know what I mean? Sometimes you have a spot that you know where you're weakest at, and you know how you have to adjust and adapt to that. And you know what I mean? At the end of the day, whoever is in that spot is going to continue getting better because they ain't got a choice. You going to go out there on Saturdays and get embarrassed, or you going to go out there and compete and fight and claw and be the best that you can be on Saturday? I mean, your best may be a C grade, but you know what? If you go out there with other guys that are playing B and A levels, man, I mean, C level, it's going to be productive. So, I mean, at the end of the day, they all have their struggles. Every one of them do. You know, I did when I played, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, you got to minimize your mistakes, and you got to minimize your negative plays.
Yep. They did it certainly wasn't a documentary. It was a movie about the left tackle position, some of which was true about Michael Orr. But let me ask you this. Much of it wasn't true. But Spencer, what position, if you went into a season as a coach on the offensive line, would you most want to be great at?
Center.
I knew you would say that.
It has nothing to do because I played it.
Yeah.
They have to get the right side communicating with the left side. He's the guy who has to be able to understand what we are doing on every play and run protection, making sure we call the mic out, making sure we know who we're not blocking, who's the hot guy. You know what I mean? We say us four got these four, and so on and so forth. And there's just a million different things that's got to go on before the ball snaps. And you got to process that in a very timely manner.
You have to do it too against an A&M defense that it's a little like a defense facing a triple option back in the day when Georgia Tech ran that a lot, because they ran that 3-down look. That was not an easy challenge for Tennessee's offensive line. We didn't factor that in because they played so well.
Sure. I mean, playing a 3-down front, it can definitely get tricky because of how much different looks pressure-wise they can bring at you. You know what I mean? You got to know what your rules are, and you got to know how those work, and everybody has to be on the same page, especially with 3-down, because, you know, when you're playing a 4-down front, I mean, you got the 4-down guys and a front side or a backside linebacker. Here versus a 3-down, you're going to have to deal with 3-down guys, either a front side outside backer or a front side inside backer. You know what I mean? Or, hey, are we turning the outside backer loose on this play? Back's got him, and we're handling the middle two and the backside. You know what I mean? It's just different. You know what I mean? You got to know what the protection says we got is what we do, and hey, that may change on the fly.
Spencer, I'm gonna put you on the spot. I'm gonna try to invoke a comparison here, and you tell me if I'm being blasphemous or not. Because Jamal Lewis was the best running back you guys had at Tennessee, but I thought the hardest running back was Travis Henry. Jalen Wright may not be as good as Travis Henry, but I feel like he runs as hard as Travis Henry. They're the two hardest running backs I've ever seen play at Tennessee. What are your thoughts on that?
You say hard, I say angry.
Yeah. Somebody texted that to me. Somebody texted that to me over the weekend.
He ran angry. I mean, I don't know this guy well enough. Travis Henry ran angry. You know what I mean? He tried to hurt people when he hit you. It didn't matter. So, I you know, potato, I guess. You know what I mean? Whatever you want to say there. But I say angry. I don't say hard. Anybody can try to run hard. Not many people run angry.
So what you're saying is they embrace the contact and they want to hurt the people tackling them.
Oh, yeah, 100%. There's difference. Yeah, you know what I mean? That's kind of how I look at it.
Spencer, I also think you're seeing defenses, they realize that he can bounce it outside, and he did that a little bit too much last year, but now there's a bit of uncertainty. Is he going to bounce it outside on me, or is he going to run me over? And I feel like it's in their head a little bit, and that's got to help too. That was J-Lu. He could truck you. He could bounce it outside. And as a defender, there's no guy I'd least rather want to tackle than a guy who can do both.
Well, you mean when you're 220, 30 pounds and you run a 4.5, 4.6, come on now. It's like running into a freaking brick wall. Why would you want to tackle that for 4 quarters? I mean, it makes your body feel awful the next day, and you're like, geez, I just got hit by a freaking truck. I mean, it is what it is. You know what I mean? As for linemen, you love guys who run physical and run angry because it makes your job easier. You know what I mean? And for us, you know, I'll say this: we were a pretty good group up front, but when you got a great back, they make a good offensive line look great. And when you have an extraordinary back, it can make an average offensive line look spectacular. You know what I mean? It's all about the guy toting the rock. At the end of the day, they either make you look really good or they make you look really bad. You know what I mean? So, you know, you just have to do your job and make sure that we're handling our assignments, and then the back will make you right at the end of the day.
Derek Dooley said a running back makes an offensive line look better than an offensive line makes a running back look better. I don't think you're going that far, are you?
Yeah, I wouldn't put that in that category. No.
As a Titans fan, I can say that's not true this year, because look at Derrick Henry this year without the same offensive line that he's had in previous years.
True.
Alabama, Spencer, you came up during a period where Tennessee was dominating Alabama, but I'm sure you never took that for granted. That's Alabama. Growing up in East Tennessee, as you did, I did, it's Tennessee Bama. What more can you say?
This is third Saturday in October, isn't it?
Last I checked, yeah.
Okay, let's play football. Strap it up. Tennessee, Alabama, 3:30 kickoff. That's what it normally is. It's a great time, especially when you go to, you know, I had the pleasure of going to Tuscaloosa and Birmingham and kicking both their teeth in that time and coming on back to Knoxville. So got to play the last game in Legion Field and the first game. And you know, I guess they rotate, but the very last game in Birmingham, I guess that was Legion Field. Is that right?
It's Legion Field.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what I mean? So that was fun to go down there and strike up the band and head home. You know what I mean? And then you go to Tuscaloosa 2 years later and you strike up the band and head home. There's nothing better than going to somebody else's place and winning a big football game and having a good time and celebrating on the way back with your teammates.
Was there any moment in particular that was your favorite against Alabama?
I mean, man, I probably Jay Graham's run, you know, and Nealon, when we run 6 gap and he went for like 60 or 70 right there to either go up or solidify the ball game that I was a part of. Big play. That was probably when I first, you know, everybody started finding out who Spencer Riley was there. So I mean that would have been in '96. Been '96, my redshirt freshman year. So I mean, you know, that was probably one of those memories that I'll never forget.
It's awesome.
Yeah, Spencer, it's that has to be one of the most exciting. What do you think it says about the Tennessee program that, you know, there's been a lot over the past like 10, 15 years, Tuscaloosa was just written off as a loss for Tennessee. And while Tennessee is an underdog, it's a big jump for Tennessee, right? To be going to face Nick Saban on the road and you're not just writing this game off as a loss anymore, the way they did the last 15 years.
Sure. Yeah, for sure. I mean, the expectations are higher. Let's call it how it is. The expectation is we go and beat everybody we play. Knowing that's not necessarily the case. And, you know, in the SEC this year, anybody can beat anybody at any given time. That's how level the playing field is. There's not anybody that's truly head and shoulders above everybody. Look, I'll say this. I don't think Georgia's better than everybody, like everybody wants them to be. I mean, you go to Vandy and Vandy scores 20 on you. Come on now. I mean, let's be honest. And I get it, you know what I mean? But the SEC is an equal playing field, and it's a very level playing field. Yeah, some have better players than others, so we probably face the best D-line that the NIL money could buy. And, you know what I mean, let's be honest with it. You know, we took care of our business, and, you know what I mean, and as we go through as a team, and wins aren't going to be individual based in this season. You know what I mean? They're going to be individuals who have success because the team is having success. Joe Milton might not ever throw for 300 yards again. And I don't care if he does. As long as at the end of the day we're winning football games, it don't matter if we win by 1 or 101. And it don't matter if it's pretty or ugly. A win is a win. Don't give a shit day or what day of the week it is. My fault.
That's all
Why we
right.
love Spencer.
Spencer's a high school coach. I'm terrible predicting games, so we don't gamble. Caleb, though, has a bit of a problem, and he sees that. He
What's the
sees
spread?
that 9.5. That's what I was going to ask you about.
I'll
What do you
take
think?
Tennessee to cover.
I would too.
Yeah.
Wow.
If it's more than 10, I wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, I look at. I think Tennessee is, and Smoky Mountain Red said we have a fighter's chance. I don't know if he meant this by his choice of words, but a puncher's chance means you've got to get lucky. You've got to make a play. A fighter's chance, yeah, I think Tennessee has a fighter's chance. Are they 60%? Are they have a 40% chance of winning the game, whatever the case may be. But I believe they're going to stand toe to toe with Alabama. I don't think they're going to go down there and fold. I just don't see that out of this team.
No, and let's be honest. I mean, Alabama's in the same kind of boat we are. The quarterback's not playing great. You know what I mean? I think our offensive line's better than Alabama's offensive line. And I really do. So I think we're in our front. I think our D line is probably better, if not as equal. You know what I mean? I know Alabama's given up a bunch of sacks over the last couple of weeks, and that's why I said that I would give the advantage to us on that.
Have I asked you specifically about James Pierce?
We've talked about him.
Okay. Wow.
Oh,
So Fred said it about a month ago. He said his upside is Leonard Little. And
100% on that.
Fred doesn't, I mean, you guys don't make a lot of comparisons because it's tough to do, different players, different people. And you're talking about one of the elite pass rushers ever, and you're already saying 100%. If you could just kind of expand on that, that'd be great.
I mean, his athletic ability and his speed, his length. I mean, it's hard to block a guy when he's a 4. You're an offensive lineman and he's running a 4.4. Let's just call it how it is. They're going to get out there on the edge, and you have to be great with your fundamentals and your technique every time he steps on the football field. Every time you step on the football field, because his speed, and at the end of the day, speed kills. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, no matter what it is, but his speed and his athletic ability is bar none one of the best I've seen in a long time in Tennessee.
Insane. These two teams, according to Travis, are ridiculously similar. You laid that out to some extent. They are pretty similar. And for this to be an air quote off year for Tennessee because of the quarterback position, perhaps, that says a lot about where Tennessee's program is.
Headed in an upward direction for sure.
Yep, no doubt about it. I appreciate you as always, Spencer. Who you got this week?
We have Cott County this week, non-region game, a rival game. It's been played here for many, many years. So we go up to Cott County and play, and hopefully we can come out. First time we've played on grass all year, so we had to figure out how to play on grass since we've been playing on that fake grass. So, I mean, come on now. We have to figure out how to do that and do all that good stuff. Make sure we take our special teams and do that. Hey, who knows how high or short the grass will be.
Yeah, that's the exact opposite of when my high school played in the state finals. They played on turf for the first time, and nobody told anybody what shoes to buy, so they just tripped all over the field. Next thing you know, Brentwood Academy wins 48-6, I think.
Nice. That's not good.
No, guys were tripping coming off the field because they wore the wrong shoes. It was not a pretty day in Nashville there, Spencer. Hey, buddy, I appreciate it. Best of luck the rest of the season. Continue to crush it, man, and you mean a lot. I appreciate your time.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank y'all very much, and hey, we'll catch you next week. Okay?
Thank you. Spencer Riley.
Bye.
So good. So fantastic. Love visiting with him. Coming up on the program, we'll have the SEC Power Rankings, Week 7 recap, and how that affects the Vols. As I'm telling you, you have got to be super excited about this Tennessee football team, even though that wasn't the most beautiful win, because if you're used to Hendon Hooker throwing 15 touchdowns a game, it's probably not going to be. But that to me was a sign that Tennessee's football program, maybe not the team, but program the trajectory is incredibly good. 2 minutes coming up. We will have the what happened in the SEC, the line rankings for Tennessee as well, and power rankings as well, because there was a lot happening in the SEC. We'll get to that. Where does Tennessee fall? Hang with me. 2 minutes. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. This is Off the Hook Sports.
Got cataracts? We can fix that. Never miss another moment. With a little help from Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn at cctis.com.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
These mountains hold and defend a spirit far better than moonshine. A drink that holds flavor, that becomes necessity. A hard cider made and relished by folk who are as hearty as they are legend. A refreshment that can only be found in one place. With a taste that makes you say, give me 3 bottles of the good stuff. Tennessee Cider Company, where necessity can be found.
Welcome back. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. Let's take a look at the line and where Tennessee ranks in the AP and coaches poll. And what does that say about the national perception of the Vols? 9.5-point underdogs to Alabama. That line brought to you by our friends at Zen Sports, the new sportsbook in Tennessee, revolutionizing the way you earn sports betting rewards. That means no more deposit bonuses that turn into deposit nightmares. 9.5 on Zen Sports. What you see is what you get. And with that, you get their cash rewards program. You get a lot of cash. For a welcome bonus, earn an unlimited 5% cash back on your betting volume for your first 15 days when you sign up with the promo code HOOKED. That's HOOKED. Sign up. That's right. Unlimited 5% cash back. Keep betting. Keep earning with up to 3% cash back. 9.5. And your betting volume every month after that. Refer friends to earn a percentage of their betting volume as cash rewards too. Zen Sports bringing the cash back to Tennessee. So if you bet big on sports, you want to be betting on Zen Sports. Zen Sports betting just got better. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Must be 21 and over. And in Tennessee to bet 9.5. If this was the exact same football team and they were wearing blue and they were the University of Alabama, Birmingham, this wouldn't be 9.5. Tennessee fans move the line at times because it's a heavy gambling state, but no team moves the line like Alabama. This to me feels like this should be a 6.5-point spread, not a 9.5-point spread. Caleb, you're more into the gambling scene. What do you think?
Well, let's be fair here. Let's look at last year. Tennessee was a 9-point underdog. To go from a 9-point dog at home to a 9.5-point dog on the road against Alabama shows an improved perception of Tennessee. Not to mention, just the last few times they were in Tuscaloosa, Dave, 25-point underdogs in 2021, 34.5 in 2019, 37. They were 37-point dogs in 2017. By the way, Alabama covered that 37-point spread. Butch Jones's last year, but it's so the spreads have been horrific for Tennessee and Tuscaloosa, and Alabama still managed to cover them. I think the big difference for what a lot of people are seeing, and this comes down to one thing. These teams are very similar, but the odds makers have a lot more faith. They're giving Alabama some points for being at home, and they have more faith in Jalen Milroe than Joe Milton. I mean, and let's be honest, who can blame him? Jalen Milroe looks against Texas A&M. He was significantly better throwing the ball than Joe Milton was throwing the ball.
Agreed.
And that's enough to go from 6 to 9.5, if I'm going to be honest.
So Tennessee up to number 17 in the AP poll. I usually put more weight in the AP poll, but I want to talk about the coaches poll for a second. They're number 15. Now, you and I know that sports information directors a lot of times fill out these polls, but let's take our cynicism and put it aside for a second. Let's say all the coaches are filling out the polls, which they're not. Well, let's say they are. They're ballots. The fact that the coaches like Tennessee more than the AP, who some do a great job of breaking down the entire world of college football and some just slot them up if they win or lose. But if coaches have more respect for Tennessee and how they're winning in a much different way, that says something to me, as opposed to writers who would look at this and some highlights and say Tennessee is struggling on offense. They're an offensive team. They can't win that way. So they're number 17. A coach would see this as something totally different, which I wonder if that's why they're higher in the coaches poll than the AP poll.
That's certainly a possibility. There's still a lot of coaches that still believe in that old school philosophy. I think a lot of AP writers, a lot of this has to do with AP writers. And to be fair, they jumped 2 spots in both polls, but they're writing off, no pun intended, a little bit Tennessee's win against Texas A&M because of the lack of faith in Jimbo Fisher and Texas A&M on the road. I mean, this is a consistently, perpetually underachieving football team under Jimbo Fisher. And I think that's a big part of that.
Here's the thing you didn't get either. You got the interception from Gabe Judy Lawley. That was pressure forced. So that's in some ways a turnover based off the front 7 and the way they're able to pressure A&M. But you haven't seen a strip sack yet. You haven't seen a sack that really takes somebody out of field position or where they wanted to be. I think the bigger impact plays, as good as this defense played over the weekend against Texas A&M, I think the big impact plays that can switch games are still down the road.
They are, but there's the other side to that. You haven't seen Tennessee's pass rush go against a quarterback as athletic as Jalen Milroe. And look, there were a couple of times on Saturday, and you saw it. Max Johnson scrambled out of multiple sacks and made a play. Max Johnson ain't the most mobile quarterback. So if he can do that, you do have to wonder, is Tennessee going to be able to still do what they do against a Jalen Milroe, who is, whatever else he is, he's deadly athletic. And I think they're kind of realizing that. He's a first-read guy. I've watched enough of him. He is a first-read guy, right, Dave? If his first read's not, they're coaching him. If your first read's not there, just run.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I'll say this too, and these are 2 different teams, but Tennessee did pretty well against mobile quarterbacks last year, Caleb. It seemed like every single week they were playing a guy with mobility, be it Jaden Daniels or whomever, to start the season. We were talking about how they had to have gap integrity and be able to hem those guys in. That's the way they're coached. So my prediction is Tim Banks backs off a little bit the stunts and twists and plays Alabama a little bit more straight up, who's not great on the offensive line. And I think you make sure that Jalen Milroe doesn't beat you by blowing a gap protection. If you do that, you've got a great chance to win this football game. You make him beat you with his arm, not his legs. And I like Tennessee's chances not only to cover, but to win.
Do you think, though, don't you think Tim Banks might want to disguise some coverages just out of a lack of faith in Jalen Milroe to be able to read the blitzes or to be able to see them coming? Because
but that's exactly my point. I would take that linebacker who maybe I'm using in stunts and twists to provide more pressure up front, and maybe I'm dropping him back in coverage a little bit more.
And you think that'll confuse Jalen Milroe a little bit?
Yeah. So, and I think that when you look at guys like James Pierce, Omari Hand, they can
Amari
Thomas, they can get a great push without help. So I think this team, maybe not tailor-made, maybe that's a little bit too strong of a comment, but this defense is designed more so than any defense I've seen in a long time to beat this type of offense, which is, hey, this running back might run around, make some plays, gash you, keep you on the field. And if that happens, you're in trouble. But I mean, let's be frank. I mean, Tennessee now can hold on to the ball a little bit. They can run the football. So their defense is not going to be as gassed. They can play with more energy throughout the game. They're not playing 80 plays a game. They're still running tempo, but it's not the tempo like last year on offense. So that means the defense is fresher.
Dave, you're saying something wild as we're talking about this out loud, and I can't believe
It's
we're
crazy.
saying this. You're saying, like last year, Tennessee beat Alabama because we had faith in Josh Heupel's offensive scheme and the system, and that is how they won. You're saying this year for Tennessee, it's not necessarily the X's and O's that could beat Alabama. It's actually the Jimmies and Joes. When has Tennessee beaten Alabama? When is the last time Tennessee beat Alabama with Jimmies and Joes and not X's and O's? Because you're basically suggesting that Tennessee can beat Alabama because of the War Daddies up front. I can't remember Tennessee ever being in that position in recent years.
It's pre-Saban. I mean, there's no question about it.
It's definitely pre-Saban. Maybe 2007 when Alabama blew them out because Saban just put it on a coaching masterpiece that you and Josh were talking about last week, that game in Tuscaloosa. But yeah, what we're saying here, this is so crazy to say out loud, but we're saying Tennessee can't throw the ball, but they can win in the trenches, and that's going to be enough for them to beat Alabama. Not only Tennessee, when's the last time you said that about Alabama, period? Maybe, I mean, outside of when they maybe faced Georgia in the national title game 2 years ago, I don't think it's ever been said about Alabama since Saban's dynasty started.
Let me break it down like this. Who do you think's the most talented Jimmy's and Joe's team in the nation right now?
Pure talent. It's y'all are going to disagree with me, but it's Ohio State, and I'm just basing that off NFL draft picks for next year.
Okay. I like their quarterback a little bit more, so I would say Georgia, but tit for tat. I mean, we could argue that. So whichever of those programs, let's say that they're a 10. Okay, so what's Alabama on a talent scale 1 to 10? 1 being Butch Jones has been doing your recruiting, 10 being Nick Saban's been doing your recruiting.
They're still a 9 pushing a 10 for me, and it's only because of the quarterback, because I've seen I know I'm a slave to the recruiting rankings, but they put together a historically great classes. I think they're close to 10. They're just raw.
Okay, I got no problem with that. But what's Tennessee? That's the kicker question.
7, maybe?
That's comparable. In year 3, that's comparable.
That is true. You're right. That's
you can take your transfer portal and all that you want, but you talk about player development and what Cooper Mays has turned into, what you talk about recruiting, the guys they've gotten in James Pierce and Arian Carter is still going to be a star from what I hear. Don't worry about that. You take player development, you take recruiting. We're talking about a comparable roster. And who in 2001, when Josh Heupel was hired in January, I guess, of that year, would have ever thought we'd be having that conversation in 2003? I'm sorry, 2023. 2023.
Yeah, I don't think anybody did. And I think that this is the biggest testament, though. I'm going to say this. The first 2 years are a big testament to Josh Heupel's scheme. This year is a testament not to Josh Heupel's recruiting, to Rodney Garner's recruiting. This guy scouts talent. I've criticized Josh Heupel's talent evaluation. Man, Rodney Garner is a heck of a talent evaluator, though. I mean, to find James Pierce, Tyler Baron was already there, but to find a guy like James Pierce, I'm sure Tim Banks had a hand in Arian Carter. The defensive coaching staff is superb at scouting talent. They're Jeremy Pruitt level.
Well, don't forget this. I'm not crazy about his defensive backs coaching, but Willie Martinez deserves some credit for the talent upgrade as well.
He does. Getting Wesley Walker in there has been huge for Tennessee. And, you still have, I can't remember if Kamal Hadden transferred. It was like right after or right before Josh Heupel was hired. I can't actually remember. I think Kevin Steele might have actually gotten Kamal Hadden to transfer to Tennessee. I could be wrong on that, though. But it was right around that time. But, yeah, I think that the scouting has been amazing for Tennessee's defensive staff. Still questions on the offensive staff, but that's where this Alabama situation comes into play, which is incredible.
Smoky Mountain Red says, pay Rodney whatever it takes to make him retire here. That's absolutely right. If he ends up going to another SEC school for whatever reason, then you have failed as an administration. I mean,
it's funny. So the last time Rodney was at Tennessee was like 95 to 97, right? During that time, 98.
Yes.
I thought about this recently. In 2003, Tennessee had 5 defensive linemen who were Pro Bowlers who all played during the time that Rodney Garner recruited them. John Henderson, Albert Hainsworth, Leonard Little, Sean Ellis, and Darwin Walker. All in the 97 to 99 range that Rodney Garner helped bring in. And Like, that's incredible. That's a run.
Yep, pretty good group. All right, SEC Power Rankings. They are on offthehooksports.com. That's offthehooksports.com. Georgia, number 1. Hard to argue with that. You have Alabama, 2. How far is the drop-off between Alabama and then Ole Miss, who you have at 3, LSU 4, and Missouri at 5? I can't argue with you, Caleb. It doesn't mean I like it.
Yeah, Missouri has to be number 5. I was ready to drop Missouri, but they put up a fight against LSU 2 weeks ago. That LSU cover, but that was a backdoor cover on a pick 6 when they were trying to go, come back. So it doesn't really count. And they shocked me against Kentucky this past weekend. So Missouri has to be 5. LSU, though, low key, just blows out Arkansas 48-14. Dave, they're still in the SEC West hunt. Don't count Brian Kelly's team out yet. And Ole Miss, I don't know if there's much of a drop-off from Alabama to Ole Miss. I know Alabama held them to 10 points, but that game was in Tuscaloosa, and it was 24-10. So I think if that game's in Oxford, you might have seen a bigger fight from Ole Miss. So, look, Jackson Dart, Dave, I can't believe I'm saying this, but he's very close to making a Heisman case if he keeps playing the way he's playing. He's playing very well for Ole Miss right now, and look, Lane Kiffin's doing a heck of a job.
Then you have Tennessee at number 6.
Yes. Tennessee would have moved up to number 5, but I had to jump Missouri up, funny enough. I just had no choice because of what they did. So Tennessee is at number 6. They have the worst loss of that top tier in the SEC because Tennessee still has that inexplicable loss to Florida that I just cannot for the life of me figure out. But I can, but that's when I debated you guys about is Tennessee cursed against Florida. Well, if this year holds up the way I think it's going to, you guys will have a point. Because it'll look like there's no reason Tennessee should have lost that game in the end.
Tennessee number 6, followed by why number 6 and why ahead of Texas A&M, obviously because they beat them, and then Kentucky, Florida, Auburn. Why Tennessee at 6?
Yeah, because again they're part of that upper echelon that's not number 1, which is Georgia. Which is there's 5 other teams that have 1 loss in the league, except for LSU, which has 2 losses. But I think LSU's 2 losses are more impressive than most teams' 1 because they played a very brutal schedule. So these other 5 teams really have everything out in front of them. And I mean, a potential college football playoff berth too. And yeah, I'm including LSU in that. They could pull a 2007 and get in with 2 losses. So 6-2 are teams that if they win out, if any of them wins out, you'll be talking about a potential. They will be in the college football playoff hunt. And they're the only 6 remaining teams that can be in the hunt.
South Carolina number 11, Mississippi State number 12, and then you've got Arkansas and Vanderbilt. So talk about the bottom third of the conference.
You want me to analyze Kentucky to Auburn first, or just go straight to the bottom? So yeah, Kentucky I think is they're middle of the pack, and Dave, they're 5-2. They might go 5-7. They're going to be an underdog probably in the rest of their games the rest of the year after a 5-0 start. So that Missouri loss was more devastating than you think. And I say that as a Mark Stoops believer. But Florida, look, they're staying above water. They still control their destiny in the SEC East after holding off to beat South Carolina. And
Graham Mertz still controls his own destiny in the Heisman Trophy race too as well.
Oh, of course, absolutely. And Billy Napier, those details are paying off right now.
He's very detail oriented.
And then Auburn at number 10. Look, Hugh Freeze is still a good coach, but they're going to have games like what they had last weekend where they got blown out by LSU. Now, you brought up South Carolina at 11. I wanted to respond to SE Scout Guy at the beginning. I'm with you. I think Spencer Rattler's just held back by the system and by poor coaching, and Shane Beamer blamed his players after Saturday's loss. Didn't take any responsibility for the 41-39 loss. You're seeing just, again, he got a win against Tennessee last year in Clemson, but you were right, Dave. He's another Butch Jones. Spencer Rattler is single-handedly carrying this football team, and he's got no help. I've never seen a quarterback. He has less help than John Elway had at Stanford in the 80s.
No, and I think teams, too, I think they kind of unveiled the get him out of the pocket, get him on the move against Tennessee, and I thought he made some great plays. I'm talking about last year against Tennessee, and I feel like defensive coordinators are kind of catching up to that, and they're holding the edge a little bit more, and he's not able to get outside and make plays nearly as often. Plus, I mean, they know he's pretty good, and when he comes to town, it might not be a great overall team, or when you go to Columbia, it might not be a great overall team, just him and the quarterback, and it's a pretty simple way to attack this offense and to beat South Carolina. It's not overly complicated. Let's look back at the week, our week 7 recap. Easy for me to say if you just joined, battling a little bit of a cold, but I will be fine. It's Alabama week. I got to pull it together. All right, so Washington beats Oregon in the best game of the year. This is so funny. So I'm watching this game. I'm late at night, and I said, here's what I want. I want an overtime game because oftentimes I'm working on a Saturday, and I miss some of the best games of the year. And I said, a friend of mine, you need to watch this Shedeur Sanders. He has great feet. He has great decision-making. And what does he do? On third down, he throws an interception at the end of the game, and Washington is able to come back. I'm talking about the incredibly wrong game. The Colorado game is the one I was referring to. You didn't think that was the best game of the year?
No, the Colorado-Stanford game? No, but yes. I'm talking about Colorado. Wow, yeah, you were. Colorado-Stanford was what I said about that game is Colorado. That was on a Friday night, and Colorado's momentum has come to a screeching halt after this was the first loss that makes you get concerned about the season. They still overachieved. So anybody who thinks Deion was exposed doesn't know college football. You just were buying into the hype that never should have been there from the 3-0 start. They're still fine long-term. Shedeur Sanders did make a bad throw, but overall, he's actually been the only good player on this team. And I think that Colorado had a few things go wrong in the second half, choked against Stanford. But look, they're going to have to pull an upset again if they want to get to a bowl because they're going to be an underdog the rest of the way, and they're 4-3.
No, and that was number 4 on the week 7 takeaways. As again, I've got that Jamarcus Russell scissor in my body. I actually don't yet. I waited to take some of that till after. It's just a loopy cold I've got, but I'm fine. Number 1 was Washington beats Oregon in the best game of the year. 2 undefeated top 10 teams and the Pacific Northwest, but definitely lived up to the hype.
Absolutely. And everybody's going to blame Dan Lanning for going for the win and not the tie at the end of the game. He was on the goal line, 36-33, could have kicked a field goal and tried to get the win. Dave, I don't blame him at all. Honestly, I think you're on the road. And I always say when you're on the road against a good team, your options, your chances are better of converting right there than they are winning in overtime. Because as you know, Dave, you covered overtime always favors the home team in college football, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Given the fans, I mean, always. So I say you go for the win right there. It didn't happen. So what? They're going to they still both control their own destiny because they can meet again in the Pac-12 title game since there were no divisions in the Pac-12 anymore. Just the top 2 play each other. So watch out for that.
You say number 2 USC exposed as a fluke. To me, they weren't exposed. To a lot of people, they were. I just think this defense, the Trojans' defense, is horribly, horribly bad.
Let's go out right now and say, let's never compare Josh Heupel to Lincoln Riley again. And for those who don't know, Josh Heupel lost his job so Lincoln Riley could get hired at Oklahoma as OC in 2015. But Lincoln Riley cares nothing for defense. If Lincoln Riley's coaching this Tennessee team right now, Dave, they're 3-3 easily. And because Lincoln Riley can't, and Josh Heupel is showing he cares about defense. And he said in the press conference, he said, look, we're not going to lessen our standards on defense just because of the offense we may or may not run. And he said that, and he's been very clear about it. The part that exposed to me as a fluke was Caleb Williams played awful. And guys, remember, this was midterm week for Notre Dame. Notre Dame just lost to Louisville last week, who was exposed as a bad team, as an overrated, undefeated team because they just lost to Pittsburgh. And they just beat the brakes off USC. I think this game is losing to this Notre Dame in this type of situation, I think is enough to say you shouldn't be in the playoff. I don't care what you do the rest of the way. That's a bad loss.
Well, certainly is. And then lastly, on our week 7 recap is number 5 ACC down to 2 undefeated teams. And it just appears that there's a couple of conferences that, especially in the top half, top quarter, top third, are better than the SEC.
Yeah, it's we still don't know for sure with the ACC. We knew North Carolina was going to beat Miami after what happened last week. I think Miami's quit on Mario Cristobal completely. But Florida State is legitimate. That UNC FSU showdown is going to be epic. So they're the top 2 teams, clear cut. But again, there's still half a season to go. So I don't know yet if I think top to bottom, the SEC is still better than the ACC. But Florida State is making it clear this year they could compete in the ACC and the SEC. And look, I was wrong. I thought Florida State would collapse, and I was dead wrong.
Yep. You were down on Florida State. I was unsure. I definitely wasn't on board. I think they proved both of us to some extent wrong. But as far as just kind of looking back over, Colorado's momentum comes to a screeching halt. Still, they're 4-3. I think they won one game last year. This is still a program trending in the right direction. I think because they beat TCU and had some big wins early that people got overly excited. Goodness gracious, 60 Minutes did a second piece on Deion Sanders. So people got overly excited. The hype train really got going. But still, this is a program that Deion Sanders, the problem with Deion is he's going to at some point lose some of these great coaches that he's assembled. And they're paying coaches a lot of money. And at some point when they lose them, we're going to see what Deion Sanders is as a coach. But right now, as an organizer of a program, he's very, very good. And I will tell you, I don't think you want him in the SEC anytime soon. Some other thoughts over the weekend is the Heisman race. So let's get to the Heisman race in just a second. But first, you have the Big Ten has a top 3 that is very clear, but you think Michigan's still overrated. I'm using eye tests, so I could be proven wrong. I still think they're pretty good and maybe the best team in the nation.
I think I've learned enough about college football to when you're playing an easy schedule, you never buy into it. Michigan has played air for 7 weeks. And I'm going to say they've played air. So it would have been shameful if they didn't look this good. And by the way, Penn State just blew out UMass 63-0. Why are we not saying Penn State's as good as Michigan? Because UMass is as good as every team Michigan's played this year. Their schedule's worse than Georgia so far. And UMass is terrible.
Hot seats, the storyline of SEC coaches. I'm going to put the over-under of 3.5. 3.5 SEC coaches lose their job, not by their own choice. They're not going to the NFL to coach the Dallas Cowboys, which would be fine with me. But I'm putting the over-under at 3.5. How many guys lose their job this year? Over-under.
That's an easy under for me because Jimbo Fisher is definitely in trouble after this loss. Sam Pittman's in trouble. Shane Beamer's in trouble. But Billy Napier and Shane Beamer both. Billy Napier saved his position with Florida. I don't think he'll be gone at the end of the year. And honestly, I think South Carolina is pretty much in it for a little while with Shane Beamer, no matter what happens this year. So 3.5 is an easy under. I actually would probably set that line at 2, not even a half, just straight up 2. And
okay, but remember this: you've always got the Dan Mullen shark incident that's floating
Jim
out
McElwain,
there.
you mean?
Jim McElwain. Sorry, Dan Mullen. Somewhere like I wasn't naked with a shark.
Well, the other
you've always go ahead.
You bring up former Florida coaches. Could Urban Meyer be jockeying for that Texas A&M job? That's a good job with the right coach.
Yeah, but Urban Meyer is so insecure. I feel like he wouldn't take that job because it's not Texas. Do you see what I'm saying? I think like he's just if I want to go back into college football, I got to be the state school. I got to be Oklahoma, not Oklahoma State. I got to be Texas, not Texas A&M. I think he's that petty.
Throw history aside real quick. There is no reason Texas A&M has not had the same decorated history as Texas. They've just massively underachieved and made missteps as a program over the years. But I've maintained, dating back to the 1950s, if Texas A&M had the right coach, it'd be a different story. They did have the right coach in Bear Bryant, but Bear Bryant had to rebuild the program from scratch. But they've never, ever maneuvered right with the program. But it has all the resources to be equally as good as Texas, and it's their own fault that they're not.
Yep. Heisman race in college football after week 7. I remind you that nobody wins the Heisman in October, but Michael, don't call me Penix Jr. is in at number 1, according to Caleb. Dylan Gabriel, number 2. Jaden Daniels, who I've got a weird feeling is going to end up winning this thing somehow, some way. Bo Nix is number 4. Drake May is the best player of this group. I'll go ahead and tell you, but that doesn't mean you win the Heisman. Why do you have those guys 1 through 5?
Well, Michael Penix, in the most significant game of the year in college football so far, threw for 4 touchdowns, played a great game. You got to put him in there. Dylan Gabriel, that Texas win is still in my head. Oklahoma had a bye this week, but Oklahoma, they're right up there. Jaden Daniels, guys, look at his stats. He's by far the top producer in college football right now of any quarterback. The only reason he's not number one is the 2 losses. And one of them wasn't his fault. I mean, Jaden Daniels did his job against Ole Miss. So you can't knock him for that. And by the way, Malik Neighbors could be in the race too very, very soon instead of him for LSU. Number 4.
So weird seeing Bo Nix on this list.
It really is. And I didn't have him on this list last week, but Bo Nix played great at Washington. And he played so good that even in a loss, I put him in the Heisman race because Bo Nix they're not done on the year. And number 5, Drake May doesn't have the stats. Like even this past week, and he only completed like 57% of his passes. But I'm with you. The talent is there. And you talk eye test. Drake May's kind of got a Shedeur Sanders thing going where he's maximized. He's making up for all the other deficiencies on the team. The difference is UNC is 6-0 and Colorado's 4-3.
Huge if Shedeur Sanders doesn't throw that ball into coverage on third down, which was just really stupid. He should have thrown that ball away. If he doesn't and they beat Stanford, is he on this list in your top 5?
Yes, absolutely. Easily. And I still believe in him. I can't go by him leading the league in yards though, or leading the NCAA in yards though, because let's be honest, all Colorado's doing is throwing the ball. They have no running game.
So top 10 in college football after week 7, Oklahoma, Washington, Florida State 3, Ohio State 4, North Carolina 5, Texas 6, Oregon number 7, Alabama number 8, Georgia number 9, Penn State number 10. Georgia 9, Caleb, come on. I know what you're doing with the power rankings, but that's a better team than 9th in the nation.
This is not a ranking based on who I think is better or based on my projections. This is a ranking based on your body of work. Alabama's 1-loss record is way better than Georgia's undefeated record. Georgia and Penn State have barely played a better schedule than Michigan, who you notice is not even in my top 10, because Georgia and Penn State and Michigan have played the flukiest, easiest schedules I've ever seen college football teams play. Alabama has not. And by the way, that I also have 1-loss Oregon ahead of those teams too, and I have 1-loss Texas ahead of those teams. So I got 3 1-loss teams ahead of Georgia, Penn State, and Michigan, and I'm not losing any sleep over it because Georgia, Penn State, and Michigan have I played the easiest possible schedules. I think Boise State may have played a harder schedule than them at this point.
Yep. Good morning to you, Charles. Charles is in charge. And we appreciate you being a part of the program today. Thanks for working with me through a bit of a cold. Hopefully this is D-Day for this cold. D is in, darn it, it's horrible, and I get over it by tomorrow. But we will have Cooper Mays, Jacob Warren, and Fred White on the YouTube channel. For Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a presentation